In this segment, we'll discuss the proper installation and fabrication of both inside and outside corners. It's important that your inside corners are tight and flush to the back of the wall. You'll need to cut out a square of material in front of your inside corner in order that the two leading edges come together and can be welded.
We're trying to achieve 6-inch base. So with a 3-inch offset router, I'm going to add 3 inches to 6 inches to get 9, and that's where I'm going to make my marks. Put a straight edge across. Feel it to make sure you get all the way through. This corner over here is going to be your inside corner. These two pieces of base fold together. You'll notice I only went all the way through on one side. I could have gone all the way through on this side too. I do that so I leave a little extra material here. It makes it easier to weld. So just route it all the way through on one side. You take the outside of the route that you just made and you cut it down to the top of the adjacent route. Take that same line and you cut a little perfect 6x6 square out. Now this way, it'll fold right up the wall. Next thing you do is flip it over to the service side and step in the routes that you just cut. This way when you push it into the wall, it doesn't try to push back out. It'll hold its form. Now you're set. Make sure all the corners are as tight as possible. Now you have a nice inside corner right here to weld.
Outside corners are fabricated using the overlap method on your 90-degree angles. You'll want to triple weld the leading edge for maximum strength.
Here I'm going to show you how to technique for welding up the outside corner. We use the overlap technique where you overlap one side of your base over the other, and this is just how you cut it when you're coming to trim it. So as you can see here, I'm flush between this piece of material and this little piece of material. This piece is overlapped over top of this one completely, and I'm flush right here. First thing I'm gonna do is groove my floor seams, which is already done right here. The next thing I'm gonna do is groove my vertical seams. Unlike all the other seams, this one is actually easier to groove with a straight knife as opposed to a hook blade. And what you want to achieve is kind of this same V groove, but up here in the vertical. So I'm going to cut a little notch out of this section, and then I'm going to come back and cut a notch out of this section so a weld will fit right inside of it. Now I like to cut upwards, but that is just preference. However you are comfortable will work fine. Got one grooved out. Come back. And these you don't want to be any wider than probably a 1/2 inch. It's good to have 2 or 3 welds in here so it's extra strong in case carts or kegs or anything knocks into it. I leave these a little stronger than the floor welds. So now that I got a good V groove all the way throughout, I'm ready to weld it. First thing I like to weld on the outside corner is actually the floor weld. So I'm going to stick a weld as far back inside of this gap as I can and weld the floor. That way I have a good seal to start from. Let that cool down a little bit. After I weld my floor weld, I'm going to recheck this, make sure I'm still flush, make sure that everything's still cut correctly, which it looks like it is. Nothing has moved around since I welded it. And I'm ready to start welding vertically. So the first thing I'm going to do is I like to cut a little piece of material about this size, just so I can prop it up against here, put my foot up against it. When I weld it, it holds it in place. Otherwise, the weld is just going to push this out right here and leave a little air gap, if not possibly the very weak weld. Get rid of this little flap right here because it's not welded. And here I'm just going to go real slow, make sure I get a melt all the way through both sides. Pushing it through with my opposite hand, just to make sure it sinks all the way in between the 2 pieces of material. That's your main strength weld. I mean, it's welded up as it is, you know, as strong as it's ever going to be right now. But what I'm going to do is add a couple extra welds to make it look good aesthetically. There's a little crevice right here. It looks like there's going to be a little crevice right here as well. So before I shave anything and get anything sealed, I'm going to go ahead and fill those crevices. Now here I'm not going quite as slow because I'm not melting as much material. This is kind of a surface melt. So I'm going to let it ride a little faster. I'm only melting about 10% of the material here. Got that corner. Now I'm going to come melt the other side. Just like your floor welds, you want to let this cool down, probably to about 90 degrees. You also want to make sure you have a really sharp blade on your knife before you trim it. When I do an outside corner, I usually put a fresh blade on every time. Your first cut right here is the most vital. It's hard to fix it if you don't cut it correctly. So take your time. All right, let's cool down just enough. I'm gonna get above it, and I'm gonna find my point where it's flush. Put 2 hands on the knife and just slowly shave it down. Shave off this side as well. What you're trying to do here is just to get it as smooth as possible. So when you go back over here and strike it with heat, it looks very smooth. And you just want to take your finger and feel all the way down the weld with your fingernail and just make sure it's strong. If you can feel your finger go in and it feels like it's thinner than an 1/8 inch right here, probably got to cut out a little bit of it and re-weld it to get your strength back. This is definitely the hardest weld to do, is this outside corner, but once you get the hang of it, you get the process down, it's not too difficult. It's definitely the hardest one for beginners though. Just get it as smooth as you can, and that's about it. These are 2 examples of vertical corners. This here is an outside corner. As you can see, it's been welded and struck right here. And this here is an inside corner. It's also been welded and struck prior to gluing.
If you have additional questions concerning inside and outside corners, please refer to the EcoGrip installation manual for more information.